Welcome back to Politics Today. Now I need your undivided attention. We're talking money now. 177 billion naira has been questioned by the Public Complaints Commission, and that's why it has set up a panel to investigate what states have done with 177 billion naira ecological fund from January to, I think, September 2022. That's a lot of money, and considering the state of the country with regards to flooding and erosion and the devastations that follow, it is enough to ask questions. But interestingly, the report says that 27 states shunned the invitation of the panel that carried out this investigation. Now, this investigation held between the 31st of July and the 16th of August. Yet 27 states failed to honor it. So let's have a conversation now. I'm joined by the Commissioner, Federal Complaints Commission, who is also a part of the team that's carrying out this investigation, Kayode Bamishile. Welcome to Politics Today.
Thank you very much, Terry. Thank you for having me.
It's alarming, and I think it's interesting that this investigation has been carried out. But let's start the conversation like this. What exactly is the PCC investigating, and why is it important to investigate these monies?
All right, Terry, thank you. So why is PCC investigating this case? So the Public Complaints Commission is saddled with the responsibility to look into administrative injustice within the ministry, department, and agencies of government, both at federal and state level, right? And also public companies registered within the CAMA institution of the country. Now, the reason why we have taken on this case or this investigation is simply because we've received several complaints from indigents, which dates back to last year when we had a conference, and the question regarding ecological funds was raised that, oh, we hear the federal government gives certain amount of money to states every month, and why is that, are those funds not being used? They can't see the effects because you see flooding, you see erosion, you've got devastation, deforestation, and you've got all of these things going on within the states and local governments. So the Honorable Chief Commissioner of the Commission, Honorable Abimbola Yusuf, took it upon himself to then write to the Ecological Project Office last year, November, and then said, you know what, you guys need to come in and give us some form of clarification or explanation regarding to these issues. And it was at that meeting we found out or realized that a certain amount of money every month goes to the state account, a dedicated account for the state, and a certain amount, which is 0.6% of the 2.32% that comes from federation account on ecological funds, goes into the local government account as well. Now, these funds are meant to be used by both states and the local government chairman across the 774 local governments in Nigeria to deal with ecological issues.
But are there any reasons given, before we go into the details of your report, are there any reasons given by the states that failed to show up? Because 27 is a huge number.
Well, let me put it this way. Two out of the 27, one did send an apology and ask for a new date to come in and present their accounts and present to us projects that they've done. And the commission gracefully granted that. The other one, which is Borno, so the states, which is Castina, that requested for a shift, and that has been granted. However, Borno had submitted a detailed report through the Honorable Commissioner, Public Complaints for Borno State. So they've submitted a detailed report, and we were looking at that already. Yeah, but yeah, go on.
Now, one of the portions of that report shows that the stakeholders were not operating on the same page.
Well, again, that is it. So some of the states, 8 states that came in, one of the things that we found out was the fact that the sum that went into the state account, because they came in with their bank statements. I mean, I must applaud the states that came in. That showed some level of accountability and transparency. Now, they came in with their statements of account, and we realized that some of the funds that came in did not tally with the accounts that had been submitted to us by the Accountant General's Office of the Federation for the period of investigation as well.
So now we have to pay attention to just the 8 states that showed up.
No, absolutely. No, absolutely
not. But
not.
you have findings beyond the 8 states that presented papers.
So like we said to you before we went into this investigation and when we called in the people, again, let me state this here clearly, and I think for the benefit of states that have not shown up, it is not a witch hunt exercise. It is a case review. It is a fact-finding process. All we just need to know is, yes, you got these funds. Yes, these funds were used for this project. You might be surprised that at the end of this entire investigation, that we may be making recommendations through the National Assembly to the federal government that more attention needs to be given to funds given to the states to deal with this issue. But again, if they haven't come in, there's absolutely no way we can tell if these funds were used or were not used. So for the 8 states that have come up, what will happen afterwards is that we will then start an on-the-spot investigation by our offices, by the honorable commissioners in those states, to go on and find out if those projects were truly done. And then the people, which is the main issue here, are then more informed and aware that, yes, those funds are being used. Maybe they're just not enough to cater for the problems and the issues of ecology that they're facing.
Okay, so with reports of 1.4 million people displaced in 2022 alone due to flooding.
Yes.
And then you recall that last year, I think the special advisor on media to the president, Garba Shehu, at the time said that states should be held accountable for whatever devastations that they are unable to account for because they get these ecological funds. I asked if we could restrict our conversation to the 8 states because investigation had not been concluded on the others.
Absolutely.
So now, your findings from the 8 states, what is the level of implementation of these funds?
From some of the
Perhaps
states.
you could mention the 8 states that came forward.
Well, so we had Jigawa, we had Taraba, we had Kaduna, we had Ondo, we had Ogun State, we had Yobe, and I think Taraba, and then Rivers. 8 of them came. And like I said to you, they did come with state accounts. Now, for some of them, they also did not come with their local government account. So we are still investigating. We're still looking at the funds that have gone to them and the projects that they've done with them. And like I said to you, we must applaud their level of accountability and transparency because they only did not come with projects that they've done. They actually came, some with reports, bounded reports, with pictorial evidence of projects that they've done as well.
Well, what are your concerns with regards to the implementation or utilization of the funds?
My concerns are, and I think this is where Nigerian citizens also need to get involved because I feel, and I speak personally now, that the federal government, by constitution, have no right to all those funds. So they carry out their constitutional rights, releasing those funds to states and also local governments. Now, each local government, it will surprise you, minimum, if you brought 3 million into a local government monthly, you will find a major effect. There are several things that they can do with those funds within the local government. But when those funds do not get to the local government or is not being used, then we have a problem. Then the citizens should then begin to question and ask. And that's where citizens' role come in. That these funds actually should be used in your local government. If a local government gets up to 10 million a month, they should be able to point to projects and things that they've done.
From your findings, I'd like to know, did you find that the funds as utilized by these states were sufficient?
In some cases, if I would say, I think Taraba, right? The funds and the sort of issues that they're dealing with there, right? Again, we only had access to the state account. The sort of issues that they're dealing with in Taraba will require more funds. In Ondo, in some states. So the point is, until we are able to look holistically, I mean, some of the states have also said that they will forward their local government account to the Public Complaints Commission's office in their state for further review. And until we find that, I mean, look at that we can.
At what pace were these funds being utilized?
At what pace?
At what pace?
Well, again, this is where we hold government accountable as well, which is the Accountant General's office. Those funds are not even released as regularly as they should.
How regularly should they be released?
Every month, because those funds are released every month.
So you found that not every month that these funds are released?
No, maybe not the full percentage. So they pay maybe 50% and then release some. Again, maybe because of scarcity of funds or paucity of funds. I mean, reasons like that could be the reasons why they don't release.
And in your findings, in what areas were these funds being utilized?
Yeah, drainage, erosion issues, flooding issues.
Were they preventive measures or proactive?
We can't, again, until we carry out the on-the-spot report investigation to ascertain at what point those funds were released. All we got were pictorial evidence of what those funds have been used.
You know why this is being called to question is that proactive measures and reactive measures are entirely different things.
Absolutely.
And if the funds are not released promptly, the state government can only act reactively.
You're right.
So what, in your finding, did you find that these funds could affect perhaps the response time of these state governors and perhaps the implementation?
I don't think, because this is what you get monthly. So there should, again, because it is inconclusive yet, because if you have issues, take for example, issues of flooding, where a local government or a town is being completely wiped out, right? It will take a bit of time to address that particular issue. So if the funds, which I think what you're saying, if the funds are released as and when due,
absolutely,
right, these issues will be dealt with accordingly as well. Now, the state ecological funds released to the states are meant to also support what is being given to local governments as well.
You know, many look to the federal government to respond to just about everything that happens in state. And I also recall that state governors also appeal to the federal government, despite the fact that they get 2.32% of...
no, not all. No.
Not all?
Let me correct that.
Okay.
So 2.32%, 1% of that sum, of that percentage, goes to the ecological office, NEMA, Northeast Wall, I think about 5 different agencies there. And then 0.72% of that sum goes to states. And then 0.6% goes to local government.
So would it be out of place for the federal government to still look to, the state government, I beg your pardon, to still look to the federal government, considering that 4 agencies take about 45% of whatever accrues to the federal government?
I think so, because, see, the reason why this issue should not be overlooked and the reason why state governments should take this matter seriously is that we're dealing with a world issue here. Climate change is a major issue. It's a major issue. I mean, last week, if you saw in the news in Frankfurt, the entire airport was flooded with water. So these are major issues. I mean, we should be thankful to God that we're not having issues of, wildfire issues here as well.
Now, so let's talk about perhaps international support, because
Yes.
I know that international donor agencies give funding to state governments as well. I don't know if in the course of your investigation you came across some funding for state governments with regard to this climate change.
Those are proactive measures from states as well, because I mean in certain states, particularly in somewhere an area like Ondo, where they did mention that the impact of the reclamation done in Lagos along the coastal axis of Lagos affected a particular community, I think Ayetoro in Ondo. Now, they've had to look for international funding to help support those major issues affecting that particular community. So yes, they do. I mean, some of those states have sought for international funding, and I'm sure they do get them, but I don't think our
mandate covers that.
No, it doesn't.
But why have you chosen to go from January to this, September, I believe, 2022?
Well, it started last year, and the mandate actually gives us 2 years to review cases. So we've just stayed within the mandate of the commission. So cases outside of 2 years and above, we can't.
I'd like to get your advice for both the federal and the state governments, because from our conversation, one thing you've said is that the release time for the funds, not clear, sort of affects how the state governments implement these funds. It doesn't take away the fact that the government should account for these monies as they come. But if the release time is a problem, and then I asked if you believe that based on the funds available to the state governments, especially because of the 8 states that you dealt with, if you believed that that funding was enough. So if marry those two things together, and how would you advise the federal and state governments to go about funds and perhaps transparency and accountability in this regard?
Well, I mean, like I said, on this particular issue, kudos to the federal government. Certain funds are being released. Now, the judicial
just not timely.
Well, again...
But you agree with me that the timing affects implementation.
I totally agree with you, right. I totally agree with you. But it has been released, right? Now, it is the administrative use. It is the use of those funds that we are particular about. Now, my advice to state government and local government is to ensure that as much as possible, they're transparent, right, with their dealings. Because a section of the Constitution says that the welfare and the security, right, is the primary purpose
of government. Quickly now, so the 27 states that did not appear.
Yes.
Is your investigation over, and what happens to those states?
No, it's not over. So we are going to write a reminder to them again. I mean, for whatever reason, it could be that based on their busy schedule,
and they're not they can be compelled to appear anyways.
Well, they can.
By what means?
Well, the commission has got powers to summon.
Okay.
And this will be the Commissioner of Finance and the Commissioner of Environment. Yes.
I'd like to thank you very much,
Thank you.
Commissioner of Federal Complaints Commission. You're also heading this panel.
State, you need to mention.
State. I mean, you're part of Kaide Bamishile. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it, Terry.
You're most welcome.
Thank you.